Hello, welcome to the June 13th, 2023 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field, or you can send questions in advance to other live streams, to future live streams, by emailing clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could include which version of Cubase that you're using, whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, and which version number. So if it's version 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, that information will be helpful in addition to which operating system that you're on. Realize that when asking questions, my ability to answer questions in a live manner will soon be eclipsed by the number of questions. I'll try my best throughout the live stream to catch up. So if you don't see an immediate response to your question, if you could just be patient and try to avoid asking the same question repeatedly, that would just kind of speed up the whole process. And we should have all the topics, all the questions that are asked in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field with timestamps, so you could watch the video afterwards and navigate quickly to those particular areas. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm has been kind enough to create that website for us, so we want to give a special kudos to him for that. And he's returning back from vacation last week, so it's great to see Jan back on the live stream. We also have two people that serve as moderators. We have Agent K and Jazz Dude. They're not Steinberg employees. They just do this to make it a better community experience for everyone. So special thanks to them. And also special thanks to Jazz Dude for all of his tireless efforts in compiling the Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource of information for Steinberg customers. Just one quick programming note. We will be, instead of our usual Friday live stream, we will be doing it on Thursday of this week. It's my son's last day of school, so I'm going to do some after school activities in the afternoon. So with him. So just this one time, so it'll be Thursday at the same time, Thursday at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. So just put a little note in your calendars if you're a regular attendee. And we look forward to seeing everyone on Thursday. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, basically is focusing on Steinberg products, and I'm presenting from outside of Washington D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. And if you're watching the live stream live, please introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. It's always fascinating to see people from all over the world joining the live stream. With that, we will go ahead and get started. So we see a question from Ron Artinian. Hey Greg, hope you've been well. Just want to see if there's any news regarding local undo in the key editor. Is it being considered for a version 12 update or for version 13? Could you kindly remind them? So I have sent the request in for the local undo history, and if you're not familiar with it, when we do our undo history, it's kind of linear. And previous versions of Cubase, I think 9.5, that we could do edits and move different components, and then if we did other edits, that we could go back to this, and when we went to our undo, that it would just do within the key editor. When I had kind of brought it up before, they said that it was causing a lot of system instabilities for people, so that may be a reason why it was taken out, but I'll remind them once again. So, and I can't really comment on future features, so, but I will remind them again. All right, so you see Georgios asks hi Greg, quick question. How can we play something, let's say chords, and have them imported in the key editor automatically based on a quantized value we choose? So we could do this using basic step entry. So I'm going to come over here. Let's just create a blank part. And we'll do a couple measures. And then we see these little step icons. So we're going to come right over here, and I'll say, okay, I want to navigate, and we'll just kind of move the blue line. We'll see, once we turn that on, we'll see a blue line appear. So I'll just click, say, okay, I want to start at measure 11. I'm going to set my quantized value, let's say, to half notes. And now as I play chords, let me see if my MIDI controller is not on. Hang on one second. Let me just turn one thing off. All right, see if we have my MIDI controller. Okay, so now as I play chords, and if I say, okay, now I want this to be quarter notes, and let's say a whole note. So now when we look at our chords, we can now just come over and see that all of them have been kind of inputted. So make sure you click on the steps, and then at this point we could just say wherever you kind of click the blue line, you could set the quantized value. So say now I want to do a bunch of eighth notes. And we could just enter in based on the rhythmic value like that. So, but just make sure in the MIDI editors that you enable step entry, and then you can just at that point start entering in chords based upon the rhythmic values of the quantized value. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, wonderful to see Jan from Cubase Index. We have Uno Memento checking in from Finland. Hope you're well. Thanks for joining us. We have Soren from Sweden who asks, his question is, Cubase 12 has begun taking forever to load its startup, not loading a project even in safe mode without third-party plugins. It stops at initializing global settings load. What can I do? 4-minute wait every time I want to start is unwanted. So try, just out of curiosity, when you get that safe startup mode where you bypass third-party plugins, see what happens if you choose to disable the preferences, and then once you're in the preferences, at that point see if it takes the same amount of time. So it could be that it's maybe not a third-party plugin, but it's waiting for a MIDI driver to load up or something from a MIDI control surface. I have it on one computer. I had something similar where it was taxing my USB power too much by adding a USB fader box, and then that would make everything very lethargic. And once I turned that off, I realized everything was better, and then I connected that to an external power supply, and then everything was good. So check to see, disable like any USB components, go into your operating system, and make sure that you're not running any of the USB in kind of like eco, green, or power friendly mode, and give that a try, Soren. So sorry to hear that. All right, wonderful to see Jazz Dude on. Okay, so we have Dallas LaRue asks, I still don't understand LFO 1 and LFO and 2 in the sampler track. How can they be used together? Okay, so let's come over here. I'm going to just drop in, let's see if we go to this sampler control here. So let's say I have just, I'll just get rid of this. I'll start with a brand new sampler track. Okay, so I'm just going to drag in like this note from Retrolog right in. So now when we play, I'm just going to play this particular sample. Okay, so what we want to do, if we wanted to change different sounds, we have different LFO settings. So once we come over here, let's say I want to go to the filter, and I want to adjust okay, so now at this point we're going to go into our modulation. So let's say I want to come over here, and let's say we want to so I'll come here. Let's get to our modulation. Right, we'll just do it with I'll just start with volume so we can make this really even more obvious. Okay. All right, so now we could have that shape. So let's say now at this point I want to change the frequency. And let's just make this maybe more of a, and we'll say maybe just a square pulse. All right, so we have this going, and I want to change the frequency. All right, so now we have that as LFO1. Now I want my pan to be set to LFO2. So now I could adjust different parameters. And when I go to LFO2 here, we're going to just click and say, okay, I want my pan to be set. We could have this automatically based on tempo, but let's say, okay, I want this to change the frequency. So as we play a particular note, I could have LFO1 doing the volume changes at this rate, and LFO2 is doing the panning at a completely different rate. And again, we could just kind of come over here and choose so this way we could kind of have two different types or two different elements of the sound kind of just changing as we see fit. So if I wanted to again come over here now to LFO1 and incorporate different components, we could just come over here and adjust kind of just the different LFOs for different components. So it allows us two different ways of changing the sound in real time and having the sound oscillate and evolve as we do that. So it gives you a little more flexibility than just having a single LFO. Okay. All right, wonderful to see Peter from Montreal. All right, and we have Club to Breathe checking in from Rio, Brazil. Anteas checking in from, just saying hello. We have Daniel from Germany. All right, we have Hafergut Music says hi, Greg. Joachim from Sweden, thanks for joining us. And we have Stefan also from Sweden. We always have a strong Swedish contingent. Appreciate that. All right. All right, AJ Soundbites is wondering how everyone is doing. All right, so we have Jeweler DeRocket from Ontario, Canada. Says he's still using Cubase Pro 12. All right, Daniela Tocan, great to see you on. All right, Eduardo Diaz says, Greg, Cubase 12, when importing tracks from another project, when I select import at cursor position, imports it in a different place. Any ideas? I'm trying to import tempo, signature, and markers. So sometimes when you're doing tempo tracks, what is tricky about doing this with a tempo track is I'll come over here. Let's just open up a particular project. me just see the one I was thinking of here. That has a number of tempo changes. So sometimes it's tricky with tempo because if we have, like, let's say if here I have kind of tempo changes going on.
The day we first met, that was a long.
That there is a tempo value directly here at the very beginning of the project. So if I go to import tracks, so let's say I want to come here and import tracks from project. I'll just do a new project. So we'll create empty. All right, so we'll say import tracks from project. All right, and I want to select all. So let's say now I want to put them at my cursor position. So my cursor, let's say before I do this, I'll just move my cursor to measure 1. So now when I come over here, we're going to say import at cursor position. So we do this because the tempo was actually kind of based on the very first event. That could throw off the other tracks because it's going to be, because there is an initial tempo value. So I've had this discussion with the developers and are trying to come up with a solution to kind of fix this, especially with tempo tracks. One of the things that you can do also if you wanted to get the tempo track over is one is just to export the tempo track. All right. And then import the tempo track back in. So let's come over here. So you can just simply, import the tempo track. Let me just remove this particular track. So you could import it separately, but I think that's kind of the issue, is that there's an initial tempo track that is already part of the project and it has an initial value. So that could kind of throw some stuff off. So I know it's not a great solution, but that's something to kind of play around with. So you can see the tempo data there that was imported. But I think it's just this initial tempo value that is kind of throwing it off. Okay, so we see Lawrence Scott checking in from Riverside, California. Thanks for joining us today. So we see, hi Greg, my studio manager in Cubase 12 doesn't show any motif, single or multi. The standalone shows them. Any guess? Thanks. I haven't done any studio manager stuff in a long time. I haven't had a motif in forever. But I think, make sure that you have the latest drivers installed for the studio manager. And if you're not familiar with the studio manager, I don't have it installed because I don't have any of the Yamaha hardware. that it works with. You know, what it allows you to do is to just come over and have the editor for the particular instrument that will be recalled directly within the project. But if you want to send me an email, I could do some more research on it for Thursday's live stream, and I could try to get the see if I could get the Motif Studio Manager editor. I know that Yamaha has not kept up with all the development of that as well, so it could be that. But I think I did it on a live stream last year and had it showing up, but it was probably on my previous computer. But I'll try to have it for Thursday's live stream. All right, so we have Bob Curry checking in from Tucson, Arizona. I see Daniela saying hello from Germany. All right, Quellen asks, hey Greg, is there a zoom setting like the Shift F, but to zoom only on a selected part to have the entire desktop to work on it? Okay, so let's say if we come here and I want to take this part, so we get to our zoom menus. I think if you just do zoom, let's see if we do zoom full, that would be for the whole project. Zoom to selection. So yeah, zoom to selection. So I think it's so try again, just coming over and selecting the particular event, and let me see if it's the key command for that is just zoom to selection. So it looks like it's maybe Shift S. No, or command. So, or Alter option plus the letter S. So give that a try and see if that's what you want to do. So just for a particularly selected device or selected event. So here, I think that's maybe the keyboard, the standard keyboard shortcut, but you can just do, again, go to Edit to Zoom and Zoom Selection. So give that a try. Let me know if that's what you want to do. And then if you want to just grab the zoom tool here, you could just double click and that will go through your zoom history. All right, so we have Gregory Strain checking in from Florida. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see Jeweler DeRocket asks, hi Greg, how can I take mono strings and spread them to the stereo field from the same file to leave space for vocals? Okay, so let's see if I could we just create kind of maybe a string patch here. All right, I'll just revert this project quickly. Or so let's say we want to take
7th grade in the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us home. You looked my way and your heart shone through.
Okay, so let's say we want to take like this kind of pad sound. So I'll come over here. Let's go ahead and open up the instrument. So let's come over to our balance. All right, so I'll just have that kind of that string sound.
Oh, I remember the day that we went Seems like a long, long time ago.
All right, so if usually if you wanted to kind of spread out, one of the things that you could do is, let's say if you wanted to leave kind of the mono, so you say you want to take mono strings, usually what you do is, run it through like an effect, such as maybe a reverb. So let's say let me see if I could just render this string. I'll switch instruments here and we'll just kind of see if we could render this as a mono track here. And usually you have stereo strings. It's pretty rare to have mono strings as a virtual instrument, but let's go ahead and just take a look. Right.
And our first kiss, there was no regret. Right after that Garth Brooks show, you told your daddy.
All right, so say
It caught my breath while you called me to. Well, even now I'm so in love with.
All right, so let me just
with you.
Okay, so let me just try.
Just like a long, long time ago. Oh, I remember the day that we met. Seems like a long, long time ago.
Here, I'll just have this, just monitor the chord track here. Hang on. So we have just kind of a string part.
Just like a long, long time ago. Oh, I remember.
All right, so let's say we want to just take this and I'm going to render the stereo, because I mean usually strings are going to be in stereo, but let's go ahead and make them mono. So if you wanted to at this point, let me just bounce them down here. We'll go to our render settings. Okay, and I'm going to select that channel and I'm going to split it so that so we'll come over here to edit and we'll convert tracks or project, sorry. I'll say mono to, we'll do the opposite, sorry. Okay, so now I'll have.
Remember the day that we were seemed like a long time ago.
So what I would do is maybe run this through a reverb. So let's say I'm going to send it to an effects channel track. So I'm going to come over here. Let's get to our effects channel track, and I want this to be in stereo, and I want to now just add a reverb to that. And I'm going to add just a lot of reverb on this. So if at this point, what you could do if you want it, perhaps this to not be in this, if you wanted to spread out the reverb. So let's go ahead and just take this particular reverb. So I'm going to just solo the strings. And I'm going to add just maybe like a large hall so we can. So we can see that we have this as kind of being very mono. Now on this, we could add, let's say, our mix percentage. So at this point, you probably want it to be like 100%. But as I work with this, if you wanted to carve out kind of the center of it, you could just really go very wide. So let's go to this track. We'll go to our inserts. We'll see. And then we'll have kind of like spatial, and then you could actually just kind of go to the imager, and you could do this kind of multi-band as well, and then kind of make like the higher bands wider, so that will space out the stereo image. So we could just take that reverb, and as we're working with
Garth Brooks Show, you told your daddy and he called my mom, said you were too damn good for any boy that dumb.
And we could make the width
now dead
on the reverb. So this way the reverb is very wide.
Long time ago.
So as soon as I...
Now our two grown daughters are married with kids.
So if I bypass this,
of their own.
It's very kind of mono
and
in the same area as the vocal.
Cause what began as our first
Now we can take that reverb, and on the reverb return channel, even spread it out further, and then it will get it out of the way of the vocal. So try sending it to, if you have a mono string tracks, try sending it, to a effect send with like a reverb. You could widen out that, and then widen out the reverb with like the imager plugins. And you could just run those kind of consecutively, as we see here. So you can see the revelation, then the revelation is going to get wider. So that's a technique for allowing you to be able to do that. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, let's go to the next question. Thanks for all great questions so far. All right, so we see all All right, so we see Robbie Bowling checking in from Dallas, Texas. We have Sounds Like Matt checking in from Chicago, where it's a rainy day. Sorry to hear you having bad weather. All right, so we see question, how do I activate Ozone 8 elements? I'm using Artist 10 on PC. So it should just show up as a plugin. So once you have it installed, you should be able to just come over and we'll say, okay, when we go to our inserts, that you'll see all of your plugins just in that you could instantiate there. So you could actually just kind of search for like Ozone, and if it's installed, you should be able to see the particular plugin immediately show up there, and it'll just be available as like an insert effect. So give that a shot. But you have to make sure that the plugin is authorized and installed correctly before Cubase will see it. Great to see Tiago from Brazil. All right, so we have Helen Martin Music Tuition asks, have created harmonies from Audio Melody by Chord Track. Can't edit the pitch in Very Audio. They snap back to created position. What setting is wrong to prevent me having whatever pitch I want? Okay, so I'll come over here. Let's take like this vocal track and say we want, so we know what the chords are here. So we have their chords, and we'll take our lead vocal, and I want to do a quick harmony. So I'm going to just select this phrase here.
That was a long, long time ago.
All right, so we'll listen to that in context, and just mute some of this other parts that we.
The day we first met, that was a long, long time ago.
All right, so since we know what the chords are here, I'm going to go to my audio menu, and let's go to harmonies, generate harmony voices. So I'm going to generate 2 harmonies. All right, so now.
That was a long, long time ago.
All right. So if let's say we want to change the pitch of these in Very Audio, so I'm going to select all 3 events, and then we'll go to our Very Audio editor. So we'll come over here to Very Audio. And let me just, so we can see all of our different events, and I'm going to, let's just choose to colorize these differently. So say I want red and blue, just so we could differentiate these visually. Okay, so now when we go to edit our different voices, I'm going to colorize based on the event color. All right, so as we want to do our Very Audio editing, I'm going to come over here, and now when I go to edit, we'll see that it just snaps back directly to the pitch that it was at. And what you have to do to get that to go freely is to come over, select the track, and on chords, we can say follow chord track. So we go to our chords, we'll say follow chord track, and we'll just say off. So now when we go to edit our window here, all right, so I think it is, see what color it was. All right, so now when I do this, we can just freely move those particular events. So like we did it, we had the red track selected. So just on the particular harmony tracks, all you have to do is just select it, go to the chords, and when it says follow chord track, just choose that to off, and then you could freely move your different chords around as you see fit. All right, wonderful to see John Costigan on the live stream from Kenosha, Wisconsin. All right, so we have a question from Sounds Like Matt. Is there a way to control parameters for a plugin on several tracks at once without sending to a group or bus? Okay, so we see. Okay, so let me just set up kind of a scenario here. Okay, so let's say on this project, I'm gonna just load up a plugin across these 3 channels. So I'll just say, okay, I want channel 1 through channel. We'll take these 3 channels, and I'm gonna go to my mix console, and let's go ahead and put the same insert across all these 3 channels. I'm going to activate quick link, or hold down Alt or Option plus Shift, and so let's put in, let's say, a filter plugin. So I'm just going to come over here. So if we look at these plugins all together, we'll say, okay, we'll open up this plugin, that version, and this version. All right, so once I have those tracks selected and I have Q-Link enabled, I can move the parameter on one of the plugins, and the Q-Link will automatically be applied to all of the plugins as long as Quick Link is turned on and the channels are selected. If I turn off Q-Link, it's all independent. Turn on Q-Link, so this is our Quick Link. Now they will all match just like that. So just using the Q-Link, select the channels. You could, load up the same plugin across all the channels, and now at this point, once Q-Link is activated, they will all, you could synchronize them all just like that. So try that. So if I wanted to even come over here to say, okay, on this one, let's load a preset, we could just simply have those carry over. So try working with Q-Link. All right, so we have Spike Williams checking in from a hot Rhonda, Wales. So thanks for joining us again today in the live stream. All right, so we see says when I put a G, I guess a major 7 chord, and drag it down to a MIDI track, the notes are wrong. Maybe I'm making something wrong. Okay, so let's come over. Let me go to chord track. Let's put in like a G major 7th chord. Okay. So now when I drag it down to this Rhodes part, let's look at the notes. All right, so we have G. So that looks like it's, G, B, D, F sharp, so it's a G major 7th chord. Let's come over and say, okay, I want to take this chord. I will copy this chord to there, and let's just make it a G7 chord, and I will drag that down. So now when we look at this chord, So we have, just look at it larger here. So we should have an F natural here. So we have G, B, D, F natural. So that seems to be kind of working how I would expect it to be. So make sure that when you're doing a major 7th chord that it's like the J7. This will be kind of the dominant 7th. So, but let me know if I did something differently than what you did, Ralph. All right, so we see a question, will Cubase 13 release this year? So I'm pretty sure that, it may be out before the end of the year, but I can't really say when. So, but if I was a betting man, I would speculate that it could be, that it would probably be released this year. So, but I can't really talk about future release dates or future features. All right, so we have Distinct Beats asks, hi Greg, when using my Complete Controls S61 as a DAW controller in Cubase to transport buttons, send MIDI signal back to some instruments, specifically Arturia, and change macros randomly. So I'm not sure how you have it set up as a DAW controller. So if you're doing it, in the MIDI remote, I'm sure that there's scripts available for that, or if you're doing it in like the generic, like if you have like your native instruments control here where you could have different stuff set up. All right, so that will transmit different messages for the correct control port. One thing that could be critical is if we come over and go to your studio setup again, and we go to MIDI port setup. For the port that's doing the controls, try to just simply deactivate in all MIDI inputs and see, because that could be sending, like while you hit a transport button, like a stop button, that may actually just be sending a MIDI note of B1. So, and that may be triggering other assignments. Also, when you're in the generic remote or you're in the remote settings here, make sure you don't have in all MIDI inputs that you have these mapped specifically to your Complete controller. And that will probably take care of it, but probably the big one is in the MIDI port setup. For the port for the control, probably has a dedicated MIDI port for all the control functionality. Just make sure that is not in all MIDI inputs, that is checked. So if you go to studio setup, to MIDI port setup, make sure you deactivate in all MIDI inputs. And that will probably help. Okay, so we have a question. Is there a way to zoom vertically using the mouse wheel like you can in Logic? So currently we could zoom horizontally using the control key, but there isn't a way to necessarily zoom vertically using the control key. But what you can do is just, Shift G and Shift H, is pretty easy because a lot of times people are using G and H to zoom horizontally. And if you hold down Shift G and H, you could just come over. So I think it's pretty easy to work with, but currently there isn't a particular function for vertical zooming with a modifier key and a mouse wheel. But check out the keyboard shortcuts. All right, so we have a question from Alex. I don't know if it has something to do with an update, but when I open up the mixer, I only see a few insert slots. If I want to, say, insert a limiter in the last possible slots, it's a pain. Workarounds. So let's come over here. As I say, we go into our mixer, and we see our inserts. So I believe if we go to just right click on the insert slots, let me just see. I think we could have this kind of dynamically allocated. Okay, so we could say, so right click. So let's go, if you have the inserts open, all right, and we'll just see this little drop down arrow. So we'll say a fixed number of insert slots. So now when I go to my inserts, all of them will become available. So just go to this little menu here. So we could say, I want to have dynamically available inserts. So we can see that we're going to have one more insert slot than is available, but you could always, if you wanted to have an insert that's like, you know, post fader, you could just right click, you know, or you could actually just kind of click, let's see, you know, if we just right click on it, you could, I think we could just choose to move it to a post fader slot automatically, and the number of slots for inserts is dynamic on every single channel. So, but you could always just right click and do that, but make sure when you go to this little drop down menu, and you may have to have the racks, that you have a fixed number of inserts selected, and then depending on where you're at, so once we do this, we'll say, okay, I don't want my fixed number, or I do, then that will show all the insert slots. So give that a shot. And again, just this little drop down menu there, and you can see all 16. A lot of people didn't necessarily want to see, you know, 16 dedicated, 15 empty inserts for one post fader insert. Okay, so we see from the Heartbreak Time Machines, it says, I swear I learned something new in BASIC every stream. So, all right, so we see from Soren, it says, after starting in safe mode without preferences, it now starts fast with normal loading. The control room is missing all plugins and setup needed for it after all. All right. You see Soren also just says, maybe I should switch USB port for my stuff. You know, try to bring back in like one different thing at a time. And, you know, usually while you're open, Cubase can automatically, you know, dynamically open up and access connected devices, and you can probably find if there's one USB device that's being kind of a cult, like misbehaving for you. All right, wonderful to see Filter Freak on. All right, so we see question. Sorry, I know this is basic, but I find it hard to wrap my head around the routing in Cubase. How do I set up the audio connections correctly? Seems like it's always changed the ins and outs when doing new projects, and also when using hardware. I'm using the UA Apollo for mic pre. So, you know, usually what you could do is if you come over here, we could say, okay, I want to do my audio connections. So, you know, Cubase is smart enough to say, okay, you know, it'll give you presets. So like I have, let's say I get rid of my bus here. All right. So I'm going to remove the bus. So I have two inputs on my particular audio interface that I'm using currently. So we could get the presets. So we could say, okay, it could give us one mono or one stereo or two mono inputs. So we could configure, you know, if you have 4 mic pre's, maybe you want it, channel input 1 to be mono, inputs 2 and 3 to be stereo, input 4 to be mono. So, you know, you could do stuff like that. So we could just say, okay, I wanted to, configure. So, it's completely dynamic, and you can say, okay, now I want to add, a stereo input. We could now click on add bus and say, okay, I wanted to add 2 mono inputs. So at this point, we could have these going to the same physical connections. And so you could dynamically allocate your 4 inputs. So, if you wanted to add, this going 1 input, mono in 1, going to 1, stereo going to 2 and 3, and mono in 2 going to input 4, you could do that. So Cubase will allow you to kind of configure your inputs exactly however you want to. You have 4 inputs. It could be a quadraphonic input, 4 mono inputs, 2 stereos, 2 mono, 2 stereo. So it's really whatever you need in your situation. And realize that your input and output settings that we see in the audio connections, this will be saved in at the song level. So every time you open up a song, you could just simply have that. And you could also at this point just say, okay, I want to go to my presets, and once you have that set up how you think you may want to use it often, save it as a preset, and then you could call up your input and output routings with presets. But it's really kind of however you need to set it, is you could configure it, and then once you save the project, everything will just simply be recalled, all the input and outputs with that particular project. So let me know if that helps. Burnt. It's from Burnt Furberg. See, I'm making Mr. Jam dizzy with my mouse. Sorry about that. Try not to be too annoying that way. Right. My chat field just jumped on me, so. All right, so we see question, is there a way to add MIDI modifiers such as an echo to one event selected on a track without affecting the rest as you can with offline processing, or can it be automated? So let's say if I wanted to jump to, all right, so let's say I have like these chords here that we had put in. I'll just duplicate these. So I think it's going to be maybe on the track level, if I'm not mistaken. So let's come over here and I'll just do, let's say, in our arpeggiator. So as we play this back, all right, I'll just solo this. All right, so I think if I just select one of the events and do the freeze MIDI modifiers, that it will do it to the whole track, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so it's going to be kind of on a track basis. So I don't think that, with some plugins you can automate the particular parameters. So what I know some people will do is to just kind of, work with track versions, but, it's not like the like offline processing. So let's say if we duplicate this version, I could just say, okay, I want to, so now we have 2 different track versions. I say, okay, I want only like this particular one to switch. So let's come over here to freeze MIDI modifiers. And so I could copy this particular event, let's go to this version, and then I'll hit Alt or Option plus V, and then it'll only be, we could just simply merge and go between the two versions. But let's say if I have one version that's the arpeggiated, I'll just make this a little larger so it's easier to see. And let's say if we have another version here, so if we take this, so again, what we could do is I want to take what's in this version, copy, and if we come here, I want to take that same area where we would go and hit Alt V, and then we could have the arpeggiator written out here, but not in the others. I know that's kind of a weird workaround, but it's not quite as analogous as using kind of the direct offline processing for the MIDI modifiers. So. All right, so we have a question. What is from Burnt? Like the previous question was from Baserocious. Great name. So next question is, what's your personal preference for naming and using file system within Cubase? I mean, let's say you get files from me for mixing. How would you approach it file-wise? So, you know, so if I was to get a number of files, you know, make sure that all of your files are kind of named. You know, so if I was to do like a new project here, and I got, you know, a lot of times people may automatically put in timestamps. So I'm going to come here, let's say, okay, we're going to go to new project, and I want to import audio files. And just, you know, having equal length audio files is still a beautiful thing and easy and works very well. So let me just... All right, so let's say if I go to, just find a... All right, so I want to go to my audio. So if I just get a number of, like, you know, audio files. So let's say if we're looking at this, you know, and hopefully you'll have all of the, so once you're here, you may want to put it onto, so now we could convert to files if needed to match the project sample rate. All right, and then at this point we can say, okay, do you want to put them on different tracks or one track? So we'll say different tracks. And if you made kind of like equal length audio files, now one of the things you could do now is just come over and say, okay, I want to take like all these files. Sorry about that. Let me just, and sorry about that. But we could select all of the files, and what you could do is just have a preference on where it's probably just feeding back. Let me just add like a dummy audio track here. So if you select all the audio files, at this point you could just, you know, like select it, and if you go to file, you know, because most of the programs will automatically you know, write a broadcast wave file timestamp, and then you could just say, okay, I want to move to, and you can move the event to the origin, and that would place it at the correct time position. But a lot of times, you know, if you're handing off files to someone else, is, you know, do a quick bounce down. So let's say if I wanted to do this, we'll say, okay, let's export. Just go to this project. So let's say we have a number of files here. Like let's say we have different guitar overdubs, bass overdubs, maybe some drum overdubs. So the, you know, the easiest way, so you can see we have a number of guitar overdubs here, is I can say, okay, I want to select all the files, set my left and right locators, and then when we go to export audio mix down, I could say multiple, and we use the left and right locators to set the in and out points. And I could say I want to take all of my audio channels, and I could take my virtual instrument channels, and then after this I'm going to say let's just render these. So, and I'm going to create a new project. So what it's going to do is, even though there's like, you know, 13 files here, 8 files here, 3 on this one, and 2 files on these, as soon as I come right over here, we'll say export audio, and after this we're going to put it onto a new project so that we could see what it's going to look like. So, you know, we have multiple files all here. Just simply export it, and we open up the new project, and all of the files are now equal length audio files. Just kind of done that easily. So this way we could have, you know, make sure that it's almost impossible for someone to mess up your project. So that's what I would often do, you know, sometimes. So when I get files from people, you know, I always try to get them to give equal length stem files. It's kind of a typical workflow, so that you could migrate between different programs easily. All right, so we have a question. When using Melodyne as extension, what do I need to be aware of to make it work properly? Do I have to bounce the track before exporting or something like that? What's the workflow? So generally, if you're using ARA 2 extensions, if you wanted those to be carried over during the export process, so let's say if we come over here and I have Spectral Layers, and I've done my spectral editing, and everything is beautiful with my different editing tasks. Let me make sure. All right, so once we've done our editing here, you'll see just in the ARA tab, you just choose to make track extensions permanent before you export. So just click right there once you have it all done, and then that will write the file. Otherwise, it's just processing the file in real time, and probably won't, the edits and the processing won't be included in the export file until you choose to make the track extensions permanent. All right, so we see Nick joining us. It says, hey guys, I'm late, but I have a hall pass, and he's whacked the like button. Yeah, so once again, just so your excuse for being late, Nick, because you hit the like button. And anyone else, if you've learned a new tip or trick, make sure you hit the like button. All right, so we see Patrick asks, hi Greg, I have a problem with some MIDI note endings not snapping to the grid. I only know this behavior from the grid relative setting, yet I don't know how I can get rid of it in the key editor. Okay. So let's come over and take a look. Okay, so let's say I will just change the length of all of those notes. Okay, so now when I go to extend the note, I think I have it set to 8th note here. So let's say we go to extend. Let's see if I change this behavior, this rhythmic value, if that. Okay, so all right, so as I come over, and so now as I do this, I have it set to grid, and we could just have it set to use quantize here in the MIDI editor. So, or you could just say depending on your level of zoom. So, you know, if you want to go here, if you were zoomed in or out, you could just have it based on the level of zoom. So let's say I want to take that same note. So that could adjust the snapping. Or you could choose to use the quantized value, and now it's only going to snap, let's say, to 8th notes for my lengths. And if I turn J off here, now it's just completely free, but when snap is on, we could have it snap to our quantized value regardless of where we are at. Or we could just have it snap to the grid using adaptive zoom or use quantize. And again, just using, so now it's only going to snap the end to 8th notes. But let me make sure. So if you want to get rid of it in the key editor, all you have to do is just hit the J key to disable snap. And now it's completely free. And once snap is turned on, it could snap to the various grids. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, so we see a question from Mr. Jam. It says, are there any future live streams planned for Spectral Layers Pro 9? I haven't heard of any, but it's usually done by Mike Scheibinger. But I think that there might be some upcoming activity. So keep your eyes out. But I think it's just going to be on the normal like Steinberg Media YouTube channel. So check that out. But I think that there might be some stuff coming soon. But it's someone else does those live streams. I'm kind of busy doing a lot of other live streams. But I think we may see some stuff. All right. Always wonderful to see Miss Sable Winters on. She says her opening greetings disappeared and the chat is misbehaving again. So. All right, so we have Avri checking in from Tel Aviv, just asking how I'm doing. So I'm doing wonderfully well. My son's getting ready to finish school on Friday, so he's excited to be going up to another grade level. All right, always wonderful to see Mr. Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. I believe that since it's a hot day for a lot of people, that the ice cream distribution will begin. All right, so we see a question from Patrick. It says, another problem of mine is when I want to partially override CC automation with my keyboard's mod wheel, the automation gets merged with the existing one, resulting in a jagged line. Okay, so let's say, okay, so let's say we'll just kind of play. Just get to this. Okay, so let's say I have in my editor here, I have let's say existing modulation data. Okay, so let's say if I have my existing modulation data here and I choose to record modulation, we'll get kind of, basically it's merging the two different values. So we'll see values that were there before once we kind of undo our editing. So I think what you need to do is, one is we do this replacing in the editor. And I think if we go to our preferences and we go to MIDI under recording, and then we choose MIDI, that we could say replace recording in editors. And so now I think if we put this into to replace, that now as soon as I come over here and record, it will now basically just replace the existing instead of merging it. So try, I think it has to be done recording in the editor. Go to the preference and make sure that you have that controller set up. So if I just had this, chose to be in new parts and I record, we get kind of all this a little more kind of gibberish, but let's put it into replace. So now it's only going to replace the controllers. So if I kind of keep it at the same value, it will then just override just the controllers. So give that a try. Let me know how that works out for you, Patrick. All right. See all right, Nick got 1 gallon of root beer float ice cream. That sounds really good on a hot day. Michael Teams is always so generous. All right. Okay, so we see Patrick just saying it says it can't resize MIDI regions because if the notes exceed the region border, the sound continues to play. I don't want to cut up regions, so how do I stop the sound playing at the region borders? Okay, so let's say I think I made a macro for this. So let's take a look at this particular event, and I want to come over, and let's say outside of this event, I'm going to draw notes in. Okay, so when we play this, now outside of this event, we can still have notes that are playing. So I think I made a macro for this. Let me see if I saved it, if I was clever enough to save it. Let's see if I... I called it like maybe delete orphaned notes. Okay, so here's one: delete MIDI notes outside of event. So in transport locators to selection, and then invert selection and delete. So let's see if that works. So we have notes that are kind of outside of the border of this event. So we'll go to macros. I'll try it one more time. So let me try that, and I'm not sure if like the first part of your question, but I think that so if we come over here, and one other method to do that also might be to, if you go to MIDI, to bounce MIDI. So, but try that macro and see if that helps. So once again, just come over to key commands and delete MIDI notes outside of the event. So let's come over here. I'll just try in the editor, select all, and then invert selection, or we want to select in loop, and then invert delete. So try that and let me know if that's what you wanted to do. And I just see, you know, it can't resize MIDI regions because the notes exceed. You don't want to cut up, so how do I stop the sound playing at the region borders? So let me know if that's helpful for you, Patrick. All right, so we see, will Cubase 13 and Nuendo 13 release at the same time? So generally they've been about, 3 to 4 weeks apart because there's more features that will that are available and takes a little more time to do testing. But in years past, sometimes they were 6 months to a year apart, but usually they're just several weeks apart now. So I think that in the past 3 or 4 major releases, they've been within a couple of weeks of each other. So I think that will continue on, but we'll have to see what happens when it's actually out. All right, wonderful to see Charles K on. Glad you can make it. All right, so Patrick says it can sometimes be difficult to select all notes above a certain pitch. I know that control clicking on a pitch in the keyboard will select all notes of one pitch. Can I do it for multiple pitches? Okay, so let's take a look. So let's say in this example, I wanted to take all notes above So let's say I want to select all notes above D2 and above. So if I come here, we could, shift, double click. I don't think that there is a specific modifier key to So if you wanted to, select all notes, but what you could do is just set up like a logical editor. And you can say, I want to delete notes, and we'll say pitch is going to be bigger or equal to D2, and I'll just come here, and then you could just set up different logical editor conditions for that. So you say, okay, so just choose delete notes bigger or equal to a particular value, and you could just do it like that. So, and once you know how to do the logical editor, it's pretty fast, faster than kind of selecting multiple notes without making any mistakes. But I don't know of a kind of a dividing line feature. They would probably just tell me, just to use logical editor to say, okay, I want all these notes above that. So again, just do that again to MIDI, logical editor, delete notes, pitch is bigger or equal than D2. Apply. Boom. So let me know if that's helpful, Patrick. John Costigan is happy with his ice cream gift from Michael Teams. See, Nick is happy that he knew the hall monitor and he feels like royalty. Well, you just are royalty, so. All right, so we have Lawrence Koch checking in from Rhode Island. Glad you could make it today. All right, so Benny is checked in from Sweden. He's a little bit late, but he hit the like button. And he has a lot of gigs and studio work this summer. That's wonderful. All right, and we see Brian Sawyer from Beulahville, North Carolina. Thanks for joining us. Glad you can make it today. So we see, hi Greg, I switched to Nuendo a year ago and also got a friend to start using Nuendo recently as well, but the feature we both missed the most is vertical zoom with the mouse wheel. So I'll make sure to kind of reiterate it to the team again. So it seems like a simple thing, but I'm not sure if there's particular reasoning for it, but I'll make sure to pass it on. All right, so we have a question from Nick. I heard it's possible to use jam mode with 2 agents, Groove Agent 5. Is it possible to do this without creating utter chaos? Would it be possible for you to demonstrate this, Greg? All right, so I haven't done jam mode in Groove Agent in probably 5-6 years. Let's see if I remember how. Let's do new project, keep it clean. All right, so I'm going to do it in a full Groove Agent, so where we could have multiple agents together. Okay, and let me just... Okay, so let's say we have one agent here. All right, some good early 90s loops. Reminds me of my time working in New York. All right, now let's load up a different kit. Okay, so let's come over here. All right. All right, so now we have this So as I come over here, we're triggering both agents. All right, so let me just set up my keyboard here. All right, so I think that we have, and let's go to pattern, and let's get to overview. All right, so I think that it used to be, so I'll come to my mixer, and let's get to all right, so let's say we have both of these together, and now all right, so I'm going to just shift click here and put on jam mode. So now I think, so now let's say, so we have again, and when we go to our pattern and we click edit, we could see that we could have, when I come here, it's going to select so I think depending on the kits, and then if you like while it's playing here, so let's say if we switch to this agent, it's going to be, if I select this pattern here, may not, so let's say I go to into beat agent kit, that's going to be kind of in sync with each other, so they'll kind of switch. And then if you wanted to have these, activated for all of the agents, you could do that, and you could have these function independently as well. So let's say if we just come over here, I could say, okay, on this agent, there is a way to kind of have, you have 4 agents playing at once, but there is, trying to remember if it's just, all right, so now let's say but there is a way to kind of have the different patterns play back independently. I'm just having kind of brain cramp on that currently, but I'll see if I can play around with it, and maybe for Thursday's live stream. All right, so we see Jazz Dude just mentioning multi-button mouse can solve the problem with the Shift G and Shift H that are assignable for vertical zoom. All right, so we see from Rendra, Octa, Wes Madang, Durung, Greg Undo. Yeah, sorry, maybe if someone's able to translate that would be great. But sorry for my lack of understanding. Okay, so we see Patrick asks, is it possible to use third-party MIDI modifiers, effects like I think Logic and Ableton Live can, or am I limited to the built-in MIDI modifiers? So I think at one point there was an SDK for MIDI plugins, but I'm not sure if anyone has developed any. And it could be that since no one developed any, that they stopped. They may have discontinued the SDK at a certain point. So I don't know of any third-party ones that are available, unfortunately. All right. Wonderful to see Robert Higgins on the live stream. Thanks for being here. All right, so we see I have one track with about 100 different sound effects, wave files. I want to pan each sound individually, not globally. Adjust panning just like you can adjust the volume on individual files. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and let me just put in some sound effects here. Okay, so I'll just put some sound effects in here. Put them all on one track. And let's just put a spacer between them. Okay, so I think you want to kind of treat panning kind of like this. So I think it's going to have to do automation. So let's see. So if we have a number of tracks here. Okay, let's see if we could do it maybe with direct offline processing. All right, I don't think it's one of the processes here, but all right, let's just add a plugin. All right, so let's see if we all right, let me try another. See if we can do this without having to do automation. All right, so let's see if we. All right, so let's say now I want this one to be. All right, so I'm going to come over here. Let's I'm going to remove this process. All right, so now we have stereo file, and I want to go to my plugin. I'm going to choose mix 6:2. I'm going to rename this pan left. And then I want this process. All right, so once I have this, I'm going to, again, go to the plugin, and we'll choose mix 6:2. And we're going to have that on the right. Okay. And now I'm going to copy this as a preset. So I'll just say rename. And so we'll say pan rate. Okay. So now when I play back this first file, I'll say, okay, I want to process it with that. So we'll pan. All right, so I'm going to remove, so I have these as my favorites. So I'm going to take this and we'll delete all. So I have these as kind of different presets here. So now I could say, okay, I want to select like every other track, every other event. And you can set up and I'll say pan left. And then I could select every other event here. So as I select the particular events, I could say pan right to those particular events. So maybe doing something like that if you have lots of different files, like I say, okay, these I need to pan right, and these I need to pan left. So, and you could see just kind of in the automation. So let me know if that is helpful, but let's say if we just come and we go back, so this way you could say, okay, this event, this event, this event, and this event, that event, I want to pan left. And this event, boom, boom, I want to pan right. So let me know if that's helpful, and then you could save those as a bank of presets, and you could rename them as you see fit. But it's not kind of a switch to the panner here to do that, but I think once you have that set up, it's pretty fast. All right, so we see, greetings, Greg. Is there any way to identify which machines are emulated in Reverence? So none of them are emulated. You know, the only ones that are kind of based on machines, you know, they're all are the plates. Those are the only ones that are actually coming from machines, so they're not actually emulated, they're actually captured. I think it was with the Yamaha box. So it was maybe a Yamaha Rev 1, which was the first convolution reverb, which is, I think when it came out, it was like $20,000 for the reverb in the early 80s. And they may have gotten some of the initial impulse responses from there, from the Yamaha team, I think. I'm not absolutely positive. And then they've added more, but I'm not sure which exact plate reverbs that they used for the plates. But the rest of it isn't, you know, based on machines. It's actual IRs that have been recorded in different concert halls throughout the world. Okay, so Soren as Sir N68 is the 68th thumbs up, so he wants everyone to whack the like button, so I'll concur. Thank you for that, Soren. All right, so we see from Got Your just says, I like to automate filter on synths while in cycle record. Why is it that when it loops around, it will not write filter moves? I have to always set up pre-roll to get it all, rather just loop. All right, so let's give it a quick try here. Just mute this. Here, I'll just get to, I think I have a kind of project set up, track set up here. Okay, so I will come over here. So just okay, so I'll just okay, so it's all right, so let's say I'll just quantize this and put it into a quick loop. I'll just draw some notes in quickly here. Yeah. All right, so put this into loop. All right, and just make sure my loop points are okay. So let's come over and automate it, record a filter. All right, so I'll just go ahead and record that. So I'm going to automate. All right, now I'll just grab it's with a controller here. All right. Okay, so I'll go ahead and record. Let's say. All right, and let me just see if we go here. I'm just going to do new parts. All right, so now if we play it back. So let's say I want to start with the filter open, so I'm just going to record on the next pass. So make sure that, you know, you have the MIDI record mode, you know, set to new parts. So I'm not sure if you're merging or replacing the events, but if you're kind of, you know, recording MIDI data that's controlling that, you know, try just to see what your MIDI record mode is, but that seemed to kind of work for me. Let me know if it's, if that makes sense for you. All right, I'm sorry, that was from Got Your. All right, so Michael Teams has granted my family and I 1 gallon of root beer float ice cream. I'll save it for Friday for last day of school for my son. All right, so we see clarification from Patrick. Just says, my question about the MIDI borders was that if a note starts inside the borders but then exceeds them, the note will continue on playing until that note ends and won't stop playing at the border. I basically want to shorten the MIDI notes while still keeping the notes outside the border for later use. So let's say if we have, I'll turn off the arpeggiator. So let's say if we are playing, and I'll just put this maybe onto like a quick strings patch, something like a pad. All right, so let's say we have, and let me just delete all of my, all right, so I'll just bypass the automation here. All right, so let's say if we change the length of this event, and we come, all right, so that will go on. So let's check, I think let's check this one preference. All right, so I know if the event is split and you have the split MIDI events checked. So if I come here and I choose to split, say at that point, and let's say, you know, this is muted, that even though it was the same notes, and I'll just do more of a synth patch so we could hear it. So when you split, that it will so I think so let's say if I come here, so that will continue to play on because the notes let me just check another preference, see if there's anything else. But I know it's kind of set up because, you know, that note is still, you know, has a home with it. So maybe if you resize, think about, you know, splitting, and then that will, you know, also cut the note and split the note when the event is split. So maybe if you just, you know, choose to split and mute that particular event, and you could set up a macro to do that, then the events are still there and they will cut off just like that. But, you know, so that, you know, but you need to have the preference under editing MIDI, and then split MIDI events is turned on. But I try to see if there's any other preferences for doing that, but you know, you can still have kind of orphaned events, and there's probably a macro you could make to split, mute all the notes after that particular area, and then, but if you wanted to have access to it later, you'd have to unmute it. So all right, so we have Burnt Furberg says, sorry for all my questions today. No, you know, ask all the questions you want. That's exactly why we do the live stream. So if you have 100 questions you need answered, ask them all. So his next question is, wondering if there's a way to make the fader on the left side menu to always show. I tried to pin it, but it always changes. All right, so let's say if I have an audio oriented project, so when we, you know, a lot of people don't know that it's like if I always want the fader to be visible, you know, a lot of people don't know that you could say, okay, I want to see my inserts and the fader, you know, and if you want to see those at the same time, you could just kind of come over here and have kind of a monster size inspector. So if we wanted that to never close, I think if we go to our little settings cogwheel here, let's go to our setup, and I'm going to move just a fader up higher. And let's just come over here and choose to pin it. So now that we've pinned it, so I have my fader here. So now as I open up other inspector tabs, the fader one doesn't close. It will stay pinned open at the top. So it could be that it stays open, but it may be kind of knocked down below based on the order. And again, just go to kind of the setup window here, and you know, just you could move the fader up higher and then pin it so that, you know, even if it's pinned and you open up inserts, that, you know, it doesn't. So let's say we have our fader open and I go to inserts, the fader is still open but is kind of just knocked down, move it up in the setup and pin it, and then it will always kind of stay at the top. All right, so you see just comment from Burnt, just says, I like Cubase, but would be great to be able to always see normal easy things next to the audio channel like in other DAWs. I mean, you can, customize it as well. So a lot of people see their mix consoles here and at this point say, okay, for every channel I want to see inserts and sends available. So I go to my mixer here, we could do that. So you could customize these things a lot, by changing the order and have it appear how you want. Sorry, my chat field just jumped. Okay, just reading through your comments. Sorry. Right, so we have a question. Why do I always see the ins in the mixer? Is that for setting levels when recording or something else? Not used to that coming from Pro Tools and Logic. So, with our input channels, what you could have is, they're really handy for being able to attenuate. So let's say your audio interface is in a rack and you have kind of like normal level set and you need to have more or less gain, or you wanted to actually record through plugins on input. So I wanted to come over here and print the audio through my guitar amp, so that when what we want to do is just come over here and I could print through an effects plugin, or I could also record the same physical input routed to a different input channel, routed to a different input bus, completely dry. So with other programs don't offer this, but it's really handy. I told a story just a couple of weeks ago, like having to record. I was on kind of the audio crew for a number of live projects, including like Eric Clapton's Crossroads Festival in 2004. And I didn't have any, I was getting a split off the front of house console going into my system, and I couldn't monitor what I was recording, and I had to actually broadcast to satellite radio. So they were taking my feed. So I had to take, 48 channels, and I couldn't actually, it was just a split coming straight into converters. So I had no way of attenuating the gain. So I could take all of my input channels, and as the bands grew progressively louder throughout the day, where it would have been clipping and I had no access because it was just a straight split, I could take my input channels and attenuate the gain down so that it wasn't, because I couldn't reach up for the fader on the console to adjust, but I could attenuate the gain structure of, and as the day goes on, every concert, if you do a festival, gets louder and louder and louder. And I remember doing recording an Alan Parsons concert during the NAMM show, and it's like, this is as loud as we're going to get during sound check. And inevitably, once everyone's in a room, the whole level went up by like 6 to 8 dB between each song, as they were gradually increasing their levels on stage, I could just come and attenuate the gain here. So we could attenuate the gain. We could also just come over to your input channel if you need to flip the phase on the input, just like a normal recording console. So other programs don't have it, but it's a really handy feature to have, to be able to print effects, to set level, to flip phase before it's being recorded. All right, so we have Mars Needs Max from Houston, Texas. Thanks for joining us. Haven't been in Houston in a while. My brother lives there in Bel Air area. All right, so we see, is it possible to convert recorded CC modulation points into a smooth automation line? Okay, so let's come over here. All right, so I think that there is, so let's go, and I'll just record some erratic CC movements here. All right, and I'm just going to record within the editor. Okay, so, you know, what you can do is, let me just do something really kind of extreme here. So I'll just, all right, so as we scroll over, so you kind of see this data being written here. So just kind of going up and down. All right, so I think that if we go to MIDI, so in this could, but if we go to functions, we could, I think that there is a thin out data. So you could just, from before, so we can see that we have, you know, lots of points directly here. So a lot of points. So if you just go to MIDI, to functions, and thin out data, that you could have less data just like that. So, and if you're doing it more in automation, there you could, if you go to the automation panel and go to settings, there's an a reduction level, so that if you have like 14,000 points, you could reduce unnecessary changes at the automation level, or if you're doing it as MIDI CCs for modulation. Okay, so we see Mars Needs Max says, with that jam session with dual agents, does changing the key assignments on the keyboard work? So yeah, you could have both of them follow. So let me just set that up again. Let me see if I may still have that project open. Here, I'll just recreate it here quickly. Okay, so just All right, so now all right, so let me just get a mixer and okay, so let's come over to our patterns and so once I come over to, let's say, our virtual keyboard, and let's just say so I could just trigger the different agents here. I want to say, like, the one thing I was looking for, maybe it was that it was somewhere in here in the pattern mode. Just for it to be independent or not, but I'll do some more reading up on that and we can discuss it on Thursday. But yeah, you could trigger both agents from the keyboards to switch. All right, so we see Burnt just asking, is there a way to set Cubase to not start with the visibility on? It's a lot of things I don't want Cubase to do. I have to always change when starting new projects. So, you know, once you do that, you know, once you have everything kind of set up, you know, try to save it as a template, and then you don't have to sit there and redo all the settings. So you just simply save as template, and then when you start your project, you could just have your particular template automatically. So we'll just say, okay, when we go to new project, you'll see your templates listed here, and then you could just start with your particular template and go from there. You see, you got yours, just saying the same thing. So we see from Patrick, can I reset the settings in the automation panel? I think I've messed up some of the settings. If you let me know, I'm not sure if there is a default mode or preset with this. So there isn't like presets, but if you have like a particular thing with the automation that's not you know, going exactly what you're expecting, let me know and I can tell you which parameter to change to get it back to behave the way you expect. So we see from Robert Higgins, panning left and right the way he showed is a lot of work. Also, a lot of these sound effects are not hard left or hard right. So then you might just have to, as you adjust, like, the panning, if you go to like the automation for the events, once you have that set up, you could pan hard left, hard right, or somewhere in between pretty easily. But let's say if I take a number of tracks here and we drag them out, we'll put it onto one track. That if you just, go to your linked panner, just like you would normally for each event, you could just pan for, you could just draw in different panning here as well. So if you go to standard panner, you can say, okay, here, I want this to be panned in the center. I want this to be panned right. I want this event to be panned left. So you could do it just kind of like that as well for different events. And if you wanted to take these events and let's say separate them, just come over to, I'll just put a little spacer. So at this point you could just say, okay, now I want this panned there, I want this panned there, etc. So you could do panning like that. Okay, so we see from Patrick asks, when I automate the pre-gain in the channel settings, the volume changes don't seem to occur instantly. I always have to manually move the automation back to make up for it. Can I fix it somehow? All right, so let's say I'm going to open up the channel settings here, and we'll go to, let's say, our pre-gain, and just make sure I'm okay, so let's say if we automate this, and I'll just turn my control room volume down so I don't kill everyone. All right, let me just adjust my tempo down here. Okay, so I want to automate. All right, I'll start right at.
So we tried, but did we try?
Start right at the beginning of the clip. Make it slightly louder.
Spend another 1,000 nights.
Okay, so let's go back and.
Spend another 1,000 nights.
All right, and I'll just put on my click track.
Your chest is where I choose. And I don't know if I really believe.
All right, so I'll just try to move my mouse scroll wheel with the beat. All right, and let's see if the automation seems to be. So it looks like it's responding fine here, but let me know, as I just use my mouse scroll wheel just to kind of to automate it on a beat. It seemed like it was pretty on of what I automated. but let me know if I did it a different way than you did, Patrick. All right, so we have Mars Needs Max. Greg, question. I recently watched a video where you controlled multiple devices via drum MIDI map. Is it possible to save MIDI events with the drum MIDI map file? So yeah, if you just come over, let's see if I can open up that particular project. This new tutorials shared by Steinberg. I did. There's some other good ones coming as well. All right, so let me just okay, so if you wanted to, so let's say if we come and we had like a number of different tracks that were, like I had, in the concept of this particular tutorial was, okay, I want to take like maybe a backbone sound and maybe like, different kits here. So let's say, and let's say orchestral percussion, and maybe like a B-box kit, and have all of these kind of in one particular area. So if you wanted to just, save that particular event, so once we have, and we go to, let's say, our drum map. So I will come to this particular area here, and I'm going to go to my drum map setup, and I'll just create a new map. Okay, call it multi. Okay, so now when I double click and I wanted to just put in different sounds, so let's say, okay, I wanted C1 to go out of, so let's say, okay, I want my kick to go out of, let's say, backbone. So I'm gonna, or let's say, okay, I want this. So I could select different instruments. And we'll say, okay, I just want to make this 4 on the floor. If we wanted to. So we could then say, okay, I wanted this to come out of, let's say, D1. I wanted to come out of my acoustic kit. And I wanted this to come out of, E1 to come out of, let's say, backbone. So this way we could route to multiple destinations and have one track. So, we could save that, but if you wanted to save this where it all plays back together, so you can say, okay, I want to open this up again and save this with all the instruments as one single file. We could select this, and we want to export selected tracks, or not separate. We want to export selected tracks, not separate events. Sorry. And we'll call this like a multi-drum. So I'll do a new project. And then I want to import a track archive. Okay, we'll go to our desktop. And I'll select all the tracks. And now, kind of as we play back, everything. So this way, that one file could reference not only that track with its drum editor, but all of the instruments that are routed. So multiple instruments could all be recalled through one particular file. So let me know if that's helpful for you. Okay, so we have Anders McCormack asks, hi everyone, does Cubase have a built-in tape stop effect? If not, which one would you recommend? So you could use Loop Mash FX for this. So let's say we'll come to this project. Okay, so let's say as we're playing. So I'm going to go to my master bus here. And it's unfound in the other category. And you have Loop Mash effects. So you can just come over here. And you could actually play this in MIDI. And you could have it be faster. Or slower. And you could also do our stuff like, I just want to come over here and chop. So you could do stuff like that and actually trigger it. So once you add a MIDI track, you notice that these look like mysteriously like a piano keyboard, but add a MIDI track. And at this point, we could just take the output of this track through and route it through Loop Mash FX. And now we could just play those particular changes from a MIDI keyboard. So yep, there's one built in. All right, sorry, my chat field just jumped to me. Thanks for all the wonderful questions so far. And if you've learned a new tip or trick, make sure that you do hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that. All right, so we see Patrick just saying, seeing that the MIDI region borders don't determine the length of the notes, it has to be a preference added in Cubase 13, in his honest opinion. So, you know, it used to behave the other way, and then people would complain about it pretty passionately, that the notes were getting cut off, even if a note was hanging over slightly, especially with like maybe samples and looping. So, you know, it could go either way, but I think that if you choose to cut, you know, that could solve the problem for you. All right, so we see what's the key command for loop highlighted selection. So if you just take an area here, hit Alt or Option plus the letter P. That will set the locator and immediately start playing from the left or right locator. So you can say, okay, I want to take this and hit Alt or Option plus the letter P. And that will loop and play that particular part. We see Cubase X just saying, hi Greg's greetings from Europe. Sorry it was a bit late tonight. You got caught up recording. So you don't have to worry about being late. So we're glad you're here. But for being late, you have to hit the like button immediately. So. So we see Anders just asked, hey Jazz, how many questions is Greg answering out overall? That archive must be massive. So I think it's about a 500-page Word document. So I think we're at 26,000 plus questions answered. So, and that's probably just since COVID. So. All right, so a question from Cubase X. When dragging a MIDI file into an existing MIDI track, Cubase does not put the MIDI file into the track, but instead creates a new MIDI track with the name of the MIDI file. Is there any way to stop this? I want the MIDI to go onto the existing track. So if we come to your preferences, let's go to preferences to MIDI file, and then you'll see destination. You could just choose instrument tracks or MIDI tracks. So if it's set to Hallian Sonic SE multi-timbral, when you drag a MIDI file in, it will create an instrument track and play it back through Hallian Sonic SE multi-timbral. So just make sure that you have, just choose MIDI tracks or instrument tracks here, and then you could just drag it in and it will be placed where you expect it. All right. So we see from Alex, is there a fix for Windows Defender messing up with Cubase? If I don't deactivate it, it'll mess up and I won't be able to start Cubase. So make sure that, I think if you go into Defender, I haven't used it in forever, but you could tell it not to scan the Cubase program if I'm not mistaken. So do that. Because obviously there could be a lot of DLL files, and sometimes that can trip up like virus and virus tools. So try just to see if you could right click and have it ignore Cubase as the program. So we see Mars Needs Alex says that he had the same problem with Defender, and says you can put Cubase into a loud through folder into any security program so it doesn't flag it. So thanks for the clarification. See, Nick was just mentioning in the overview tab about the different agents. Let's go take a quick look. Okay, so right, so go to pattern. So let's see. Okay, so you could just simply come over here and have the different ones played. Okay. Thank you for the brain cramp reminder, Nick. Appreciate it. All right, so we have from Sable question: how to access Spectral Layers on an audio track? Cubase Pro 12, Spectral Layers Pro 9. So really, all you need to do is when you select a particular track, you'll see right below the routing an extension, and once you have Spectral Layers installed there, you'll see this is where your ARA2 extensions are. So now we could just come over to Spectral Layers. And now when we double click, the sample editor is now, instead of being the typical Cubase sample editor, it's now launched it into Spectral Layers. So again, just kind of come over, we could select a different event, and you'll see where it says no extensions, just simply choose Spectral Layers right there. And then if you want to remove, you could just put it back to no extension, and we'll see the sample editor come back. All right, so we see from Slims, I guess, when will there be an optimization of Vari audio, I guess sounds, like sibilance sounds, audio to eliminate artifacts during pitch changes, for example, like in Melodyne or repitch? So I know a lot of times what you could do, what a lot of people do, I haven't heard of any plans for that, but I haven't really run into a lot of sibilance problems. But sometimes when you're working with particular notes, and let's say if you're like transitioning between notes, I think one of the things that helps a lot could be like as you're transitioning is you see if you're in the smart controls to show all smart controls, that if you often take like the little anchors here, and this way we could do a pitch adjustment, and as we work with this, we can have a different area of the note, so that when we do adjustments, and often you have the sibilances kind of at the start or the end of the note where they're problematic, and this way we could choose to leave those natural transitions. So if you haven't kind of played around with that, check that out. And thanks for being on the live stream today. All right, just reading through. See, Michael Teams wants people whack the like button. All right. All right, so we see that we're at 100 likes. Thank you very much. So we see Dylan M. DeRosa says, is there a master document we can search all of the questions answered? So if you get to cubaseindex.com, you could do that, but I do have a Word file, so I'll just kind of show it real quick if you're interested. And if you want to email me, I'm happy to share the Word file with you, but let's just come over to Master Hangout. This is kind of the global one. This is since like March 17th of 2023. So if come over here, I'll just, so if you want, this is, and you click on the blue link, that will take you to the website. So we'll just see how many pages this is if I go to review. It even takes a while to open up. So yeah, so it's 27,000, so it's 533 pages. So if you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de or anyone else, I'm happy to share this, but it's also available in each live stream. But this is kind of a master compilation, or you could go to, again, cubaseindex.com and just search directly there. So. So we see Sable just asked, Greg, is the index printable? You said about 500 pages so far. So yeah, I think if it's in electronic format, that allows you to just click right on the particular link and go to that spot in the video. Or if you had it printed out, it wouldn't, you could see the question, but not necessarily the answer. You could see it and say, okay, I want to go to the live stream on March 20th, 2021, and at that point search for it that way. So I think having it electronically, where you read the topic and click on the blue timestamp, that probably makes more sense. All right, so we have Gerald Ely just checking in from Davis, California. He's visiting a friend. He can't say, just popped in to hit the like button, so it's very kind of you. Appreciate it. I hope you're doing well. Have a nice visit with your friend. We see that Jazz Dudes posted the Cubase Index link as well. Special thanks to Jan for putting together the website. Okay, so we see from Alex, here's something stupid. I just want to click on a MIDI track and expect that what I click is in key. Is that an option? So yeah, let me just jump to particular. Okay, so let's say I'm going to come to my MIDI editor here, and let's go to our scale assistant. So I'm going to, just come over here and say, all right, so it's just looking at this particular, this MIDI event here. All right, give it a second to load samples up here. So let's say we're listening to this and now we're in, so it's going to say, okay, gives us two different keys. So we're going to say, okay, I'm going to choose G major, and I'll just switch here. So once we have this particular element, so I could see all the notes. So if we wanted to have chromatic notes, which is perfectly fine. But if I wanted to only be able to see what's in key, if I click here, we could say, okay, show pitches from scale assistant. And now I could only see notes that are in the key of G. So if I wanted to just say, okay, I wanted to see all of the pitches, we could just come right over here, and this way we could see all pitches or pitches that are only in our scale. So it could determine the scale, but you could just say, I want to see only the scale. I want to see only pitches that have events on them and no other pitches. So just by clicking right here, so that way if you wanted to just, say, okay, I want to go in the key of G, and now I want every note to automatically be in key, you could do that. And if you needed to be more creative with your scales, you could come over here and you could say, okay, you could even create your own custom scale if you wanted to. So that way you could make sure that you're not putting in notes that are out of key, but I'm totally fine with notes that are out of key and are accidentals. It's a natural musical thing, but you could restrict it to only being in particular keys just by going into the scale assistant, have it determine the scale. And now when we go to snap pitch editing, or we could say show scale note guides. So when we look at this, we could see kind of the notes that are, highlighted here, and I can only move notes in the key and not out of key. So if I say we'll take our pitch editing, and now I can, so we can say, okay, we're going to, so now we could just, so when you say snap pitch editing, it's only going to so that way, whatever note we move, anywhere we move it, we know that it could be in the proper key. So okay. Okay, so just reading through comments. You see just Jazz Dude saying set the scale input, snap live input, and cat running across the keyboard plays in scale. So. All right, so you see, hi Greg, I have older sound modules like Motif ES and Phantom XR. What's the best way to set these up with Cubase to act like virtual instruments and recall patch settings when starting a project? So, if you just simply put in, for your MIDI tracks, so if you don't need to route the audio into Cubase, and let's say you're combining that, with a source, all you'd have to do is add a MIDI track because it has to go out to an external device. You want to tell what port your device is connected to. So let's say I go to my studio and I want to go to the studio menu, and let's get to more options, and we'll go to our MIDI device manager. So let's say I want to install device. So let's say we have Yamaha Motif ES. All right, so I have that. I'm going to add it. I need to tell Cubase what particular port it is in. So I'm going to come over here and say my Yamaha Motif ES is connected into my UR24C. And now I could just come over, and once I select my particular patch, and this, once I'm here, we can say, okay, this is now going out to the Motif ES. Okay, and at this point I could just say, okay, we set our MIDI channel, and here's all the patches for your motif. So you can say, okay, I need that particular patch, so we can see all the patch names. And at that point, once you open up the project and that motif is connected to the MIDI interface, it will send out the proper MIDI messages for the program and bank changes with that. And you could do something very similar for the Phantom. Now, if you don't have a mixer and you want to connect the audio output of the instrument to audio inputs of your audio interface so that you could run the audio through VST plugins, at that point you go to Studio. Let's go to your audio connections, and we could set up external instruments. So this way I could say, let's add an external instrument. We'll give it a name. So we'll say, okay, let's give it motif ES. And what we need to do at this point is just say the audio outputs of the motif ES are connected where to what inputs of my audio interface. Once that's done, I can just say, okay, let's add an instrument track. We'll come over here, we'll see external plugins. So I say, let's go to my motif ES, and then I could have the audio from the external instrument routed directly to the inputs in Cubase, and I could access all my plugins. So there's a couple different ways, but if you just want to recall have the sounds play back the same way every time, just put in the bank and program change, or use the patch scripts that are available for those instruments. All right, so we see from Slim says, I don't want to clear up every time these parts. I think the algorithm should allow for automatic detection of sibilance. Please fix this in 13 Pro. So a lot of times, it's not necessarily the algorithm that's causing the sibilances. So people often will just run a de-esser after. If you have a particular file that is causing problems for you, maybe if you want to share it, you could send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de, and we can see if the file is sibilant before or if it's sibilant after it goes through the detection. And I can see where standalone programs may offer something because they don't have a solution to have a de-esser as part of the package. All right, so wonderful to see Mark Rabin from Montana. This is always sends such positive vibes. It's wonderful to have you on. So glad you can make it today. All right, so we see from Sable Winters. Sorry, my chat field just jumped. Okay, so we see from Sable question, I forgot how to detect a key. Help on this. So if you're doing like more, like audio stuff, what you could do is, as soon as we take an audio file and drag it, and we could take an audio file or a MIDI event and automatically drag it to an empty chord track. And as we do that, it would do an analysis for us. And what we see kind of in the bottom left-hand corner of the chord track here is the key. So dragging a MIDI event to an empty chord track or an audio event that has chords will then just simply give you the key. And if you only see the chords, you could click on this icon in a chord track and that would show you the key of the song right there. If you have a piano part, and let's say we're in the editor And again, we could just come over here and say, okay, show me 2 scales. So we'll say, okay, it's an A major. So for MIDI parts within the scale assistant, we could also, the program could tell you what key that the song is in directly there as well. All right, so we see what laptop should I buy for Cubase? So what I use my my office provides a like a MacBook Pro for me, and I've done that over the years because I could run Mac and Windows on it. But currently it's not working. I don't think that it will show up in Boot Camp like in Boot Camp, like you used to be able to switch back and forth between Mac and PC. So that's why I have kind of a MacBook Pro. I know a lot of people, I haven't done a lot of research on particular PC laptops. The M1 and M2 laptops are really good portable solutions if you're a Mac person. I haven't done a lot of research recently on like PC laptops, which ones are like really good for DAW use, and the companies don't necessarily send their new laptops to me for testing, so you might get a better insight from anecdotal like feedback from people on forums that have laptops. But if you absolutely have to have a laptop, I think desktops still are a really viable thing. But I know lots of people that have i9 PC laptops with 64 gigs of RAM and are doing, heavy projects on it. So, obviously with a laptop, you may not have as much expandability as a desktop for putting in drives or samples. So if you're doing a lot of heavy duty scoring and orchestral work, a laptop may not be as viable as like a desktop. So it could also depend on what types of projects you're doing. If you're kind of doing like, 30 tracks of audio, that's, could be a lot different than I need to, stream 10 different orchestral sample libraries at the same time. So, but if you are doing a PC laptop, if you have kind of the speed step, kind of like a hybrid slow and faster processors from Intel, try to avoid those. Those are problematic for not just Cubase, but for Windows and lots of other things. So, all right, wonderful to see Gareth on the live stream. So glad you can make it. Okay, reading through, see some comments by Slims on the very audio. So yeah, we currently can't draw your own waveform, but as I often joke, I've never needed to draw vibrato in for anyone, but I need to take it out a lot. All right, so we see from Robert Higgins, Jazz Dude, I did not catch how Greg did the panning. How do you do that again? Right click, sorry I'm old. Okay, so we'll just see if I still have that project open. Here, I'll just do it from scratch again.
Cause
All right, so let's come over here. I'm just going to add a little bit of space between them. All right, so we'll just come to edit, functions, and we'll set a spacer. All right, so I just opened up the automation lane. I think we go to linked panner. All right, so I'll just come over here. Let's automate.
'Cause I've tried.
Okay, so now I just go standard panner. But I think let me just the one we opened up before. Yeah, standard panner left to right. And then I could just say, okay, I want that panned left, right, center. So now as we
And I haven't found the answer yet.
and now we will
So we tried, but didn't
Center.
we try? To spend another 1,000 nights.
so I could just kind of come right over here
Your
and
chest
just
is where I choose. And I don't know if I really believe. And I don't know if I have it in me.
and you could just kind of keep drawing in panning. So if you want it somewhere in the middle, somewhere.
And I don't know if I really believe. To let somebody in again. We gave every inch of our soul. Don't know where we lost control. Fell in love, had to let it go. So we tried, but
So I think by the time you know, drag an event on, move something on the event, that you could just open it up and just go to the linked panner and be able to adjust freely as you want. So let me know if that makes sense, Robert. Okay, so we see from Keith Young, says, hello, Greg. Could you run through importing a track into the control room as a reference track? Thanks. Yep, so good. Show you how to do that. Let's see if I have this project in my recent. All right, just open it quickly here. Okay, so, you know, one of the great things that you could do in a control room is, because the control room is kind of going out of an alternate kind of bus. So one of the problems with working with, you know, a project in Cubase, and when you want to have a reference track, is you may have plugins on the master bus. So if we have like an EQ, compression, dynamics plugins, you know, and then we import an audio track, and with our reference track, that reference track gets fed directly into our master bus. So, and a master track that's kind of going through mastering processes would really affect the original sound of the original file. So you're kind of changing it pretty significantly. So what we could do is, like in this project, I have a lot of different tracks going on. Make sure I don't kill everyone volume-wise. And let's say I have one track that I want to use as a reference track. So if we go all the way down to the bottom, I'm going to select this track as a reference. So when I go to this particular track, instead of it going out to my stereo master bus with all of its processing on, I'm going to send it to no bus. And it seems kind of counterintuitive. And I'm going to create an when we go into our studio, we'll go to audio connections, and let's go to our control room. And in our control room, I'm going to create what's called a Q mix. So we could right click, and our Q mix will look like the little star here. And these are headphone mixes for people. So what I want to do is, instead of sending this particular track to the stereo out to be kind of doubly affected and processed, I'm going to just go to my Q sends, turn this on, and we'll set the level to 0 dB. And as I play, I'm going to do just the nasty EQ here on this. Okay, so I'm going to have my mix going on. And if I want in the control room, I'm going to hit the C1 where this reference track is. And let's see. Should be going out. Oh, the track is muted. All right. So now I could listen to my reference track by listening to Q Mix 1. And then when I want to listen to my mix, I can say, oh, okay. And I could just switch and back and forth between my mix and a reference. And this is not going, so when I play this track, and let's go ahead and solo this track. You can see that this track is soloed and it's not going through the master out at all. And now I go back to my multi-track mix, and this way we could have and utilize the control room as a reference point. This is a really handy feature. All right, so we have a question. Please remind me how to have more than 8 sends. So if you need to, like, let's say we're going to take this vocal track here. All right, and let me just send it to the mix. All right, so when I go to this track, we'll open it up, and we have 8 sends. Now, what we could do is take this track, and we could send it to a group channel. All right, so we'll say vocal more sends. Okay, so now I could take my vocal track. I have 8 different effect sends that I could access. Or let's say I access 7, and then I could, at the very end, I could just send it to my vocal more sends group. And now I could just come right over here. Let's open up our chain. I say, okay, now we go to my vocal more sends group, and I could add more effect sends, and I could add send this to another group with 8 more effect sends, send that to a group with 8 more effect sends. So all you'd have to do is, if you need more than 8 effect sends on a group, you could just simply send it out, and that would allow you to have different levels. If you just need to send it out without the levels, you could also just create groups If you go to your setup, you could send it to direct routing here as well and send that to, and if you wanted to take your direct routing, we could just, have 8 groups here, and each of these groups could have their own 8 sends. So, and no matter how far you stack it, it's going to play back in time without any latency issues. All right, so we have a question. Should I duplicate the version before working with Vari Audio, or I need to bounce in place to always have the original part? Thanks. So what I do with Vari Audio parts and vocal parts that I'm doing editing on is I will just come over here and I will duplicate the version, and I will select, let's say, all of these events. I want to do tuning on these events. And then I could do a bounce in place, like a bounce selection. So now I could do, this is a separate, distinct audio file at this point. So now that it's a separate file, I could do tuning and then go back to my original file here. So at this point, I could do all of my tuning on this particular. We'll go to my Vari Audio, and now I could just come over here and say, okay, I want to take these, and Joy's a good singer, as you can see. She's pretty dead on. So as we work with that, I could do all my tuning here, and if someone's like, oh, I really didn't like the tuning, I didn't want it tuned at all, how dare you, then you could just go, what tuning? And then you're right back to where you were. But this way, all of the routing for tracks, everything is kind of automatically preserved for you. You don't have to change any effects, load up additional plugins, and you could just kind of switch between different track versions. So I duplicate the version, and then, on this, I could say this is tuned. And then I could always just, with one mouse click, go back to the previous unprocessed version and go back to my tuned version. So, like, I was doing some guitar editing for someone, so one of the things, the timing was out of tune, or the timing was out, and there's also a bass part that was out of tune, where the bass part, the timing was early or late. So I did one version that was all, kind of free warped to make sure everything was on beat, and then I did one version that was free warped and tuned, and just had separate files, so I could immediately just jump back and forth between different versions without having to move files or navigate between different tracks. See, Gareth has just realized he's famous, so a little late to the party there. All right. All right, so Gareth wants everyone to remember to high shelf that like button. All right, so a question, how do I use split tool for individual trim on overlap stems? Okay, so if you wanted to just come here, like let's say I want to take that, I could just hit Shift X and then just bring down. So once I switch tools, we could now just come right over there. So, and if you have this set to combined mode, you could just Shift X. Sorry if I hit the wrong thing. Shift. So I'll just. So say I wanted to take that, hit. So I have the combined tool, so I could do object selection, and we could also choose to do range selection. So as we kind of navigate around, But just come here, hit Shift X, not Shift S. I did it again. Sorry. So let me know if this is what you mean, but if you do Shift X, and then you could just trim there. So, and you could also just say, as we do this, so Shift X, and then you could, program minus, 1 dB, 12 dB, up a dB, down a dB for the selected range as well. So let me know if that's kind of what you want it to do with that. See, Mars Needs Max says he loves his Ryzen PC. That's great. Jazz Dude's a fan as well. He has 5 PCs. All right, always wonderful to see Graham Witcher on the live stream. Just says, hope his Cubase friends in the UK are coping okay with the heat at the moment. No thunderstorm tonight here, though. Yeah, it's always a bummer when it's too hot outside. Not looking forward to that myself this summer. But it's great to see you on, Graham, from Royal Wooten Bassett. All right, so we have a question. If I use MIDI modifiers as a MIDI insert with pitch, random, and scale, and also ARP as MIDI insert as well, is it possible to freeze both part as new MIDI? All right, so let's just jump back to a quick project so we can take a look. Okay, so let's say we have in this project, see if we still have the arpeggiator on. All right, so let me switch to like a quick bass part. Okay, so let's say we have all right, and let's say we want to do MIDI modifiers preset as well. So let's come over here and we could randomize pitch by, let's just randomize position maybe. So we'll come over here. So let's do randomize position. All right, so we have just straight chords, which is going to be monophonic. We add our, say, our random position. All right, and we can see that this is going to be serial, so that when we go through the arpeggiator. And now I will go to my freeze MIDI modifiers, and when we look at it, we should see the pitch follow the arpeggiator, and then we see that it's the position is randomized as well. So you could do multiple MIDI modifiers and have them all be applied to when you do the freeze MIDI modifier. So all the will just be kind of running one effect into the next, into the next. So even if I now wanted to come over here and put a MIDI echo on it, so I will just come here. Let's adjust our pitch offset. We'll set that to 0. So now we will come to our MIDI. Let's do our freeze MIDI modifiers on it. So it's always going to be kind of just feeding into each plugin into itself. Okay, so we see a question. How do I transpose an audio reference track? Okay, so I'm just going to... So if we wanted to transpose it, come over here, let's just put in... So if I just select the event here, we'll see from the info line that we could just transpose. So you can just do it in real time there without having to process the file and do anything other than that. So let me know if that's helpful, Sable. All right, so we see Slims just says, please take me on board for the Cubase team. We have a lot of ideas for improving the program. Works have already accumulated 1 billion listens. So yeah, if you want to, so if you want to reach out to me, you could contact me at clubcubase at steinberg.de. Yeah, and once again, yeah, so just email me, clubcubase at steinberg.de. See, Mars Needs Max says it's a sick bass. So yeah, Retrolog has all sorts of pretty amazing bass sounds. And we see Mars Needs Max says Retrolog has the most comprehensive art features ever seen of first-party synth, and the fact that they're transferable to other instruments is crazy. Steinberg nailed that one. So did a great job. Okay, so I know we had a couple of questions that were mailed in, so let's get to those. Thanks for all the wonderful questions from everyone. All right, so we had a question. Is it possible to automate formant changes on a vocal? Okay, so let me just come over to one of the projects we're working on earlier. So one of the little plugins that a lot of people miss is using the pitch correct plugin. And I often say, you know, I used to do this is kind of a running gag in in-person demos. Or you take a vocal and make the singer sound older or younger. So let's say.
Do you recall the day we first met? That was a long, long time ago.
So what we could do if we want to automate Formant changes, we just go to a particular plugin. So we'll come here and say, let's go to under pitch shift. We'll see pitch correct. And we'll see the Formant. This is the Formant area. So we could just say, okay, I want to optimize this for male voice or female voice. And I could just
waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us home. You looked my way and your heart shone through. It caught my breath while you called me to.
So let's say I just want to come here.
Well, even now I'm so in love with you, just like a long, long time ago.
You can have someone sing a duet with themselves.
Oh, I remember the day that we wed. Seems like a long, long time ago.
And if you wanted to automate these changes,
Our first kiss, there was no regret. Right after that Garth Brooks show, you told your daddy and he called my mom. Said you were too damn good for any boy that dumb. His soured words are now dead and done. That was a long, long time ago. Now we're two grown dogs.
so now if I want to just come here, play it back.
You told your daddy and he called me. And our first kiss, there was no regret. Right after that Garth Brooks show.
You can see the automation of the
Told your
plugin.
daddy and he called my mom.
So it's the same pitches, but just kind of changing the characteristic of the voice.
His soured words are now dead and done. That was a long, long time ago. Now our two grown daughters are married with kids of their own.
So all sorts of great stuff that you could do just with the pitch correct plugin. So not only can you have it correct the pitch, but you could adjust and automate Formant changes. And sometimes it's really good if you have like one person that's singing multiple background vocals, just to slightly change the formants onto different takes so that it sounds like different people were singing together as opposed to the same person with the same kind of timbral characteristics of their voice. All right, we had a question about how to remove the attribute expression names from MIDI notes in the MIDI key editor from Friday's live stream. So I figured it out and I emailed to Stefan, but just for people that are running into the same situation. So we'll just get this set up again here. All right, and this is working with the so we'll just go to our just choose our okay, so when we want to kind of switch all right, so I'm gonna just go to my expression map here. Hang on one second, my son's knocking. All right, apologize for that. Son is asking where tools are. Could be interesting when I'm done. All right, so I'm going to go into my expression map, and this will show up like when we have, I'm going to import the key switches. So from Halion, because it's smart enough to do that. All right, so we have our celli here, and I'm going to switch these key switches to attribute, and this means that the key switch is tied to the note as opposed to being tied in just as time. So when I select a phrase of notes here and I want it to be a particular attribute such as staccato, now when we zoom in, we often see the name of the articulation on top of the notes. So I'll just zoom in so it's more obvious here. And the question was how to hide that, and what you could do is just simply click here on show note expression data, and that will hide that. So sorry I had to brain cramp on that last time, but just click right there, and then if you don't want to see the articulation labeled on the note, if that looks too busy for you, just simply click right there and you could hide that information. All right, another question says, hi Greg, when creating templates, what will be included and not included in a template? I want to create a template for use by public, and I don't want to expose more than my color settings and color template. For example, will control room settings be included and other Cubase settings? So with a project, there's going to be some functions that are going to be global, that are kind of independent of the particular, they're going to be independent of the project, and like the control room is going to be global. So whatever settings we have in the control room in our VST connections, that will be persistent when loading up different projects. But the input and output routing ports, those will be carried with the project. The colors will be carried with the project. So, some things we could think of as, being global, that once you set, they will be consistent for all projects. But the control room is one of the things that won't actually be transferred over with a template or a project. It's going to be just globally set, but your input and output routings can be. So, all right, let's jump back to your live questions. Thanks for all the great questions. Again, email me. You could send email to clubcubase@steinberg.de. And just a quick reminder, we're not doing our normal Friday. We're doing a Thursday live stream because I'm going to spend the afternoon with my son, celebrate his last day of school. Okay. Okay, so we see a question. I don't see transpose. This is from Sable. I don't see transpose on my info line, not listed in the setup window, hidden items. Could it be because I have Spectral Layers extension on it? That could be it, but let me just verify that. But it could also be that you don't have the event selected. So, but let's just check just to make sure Sable. All right, so if it's not selected, you may not see it in the info line. And then when it is selected, but let's see if I come here and we put it into Spectral Layers. Yeah, so it looks like once it's in Spectral Layers, so you may have to just temporarily remove the extension. So let me just check that again. So we see the transpose there. And I'll just make sure it's not turned off there. So yeah, it looks like if it is part of Spectral Layers, that you may have to just make the extension permanent or just put no extension to have the transpose, because it's kind of going into the Spectral Layers interface. Just see question from Mars Needs Max. Not sure if it's for me. Is there a link on the profile? So I'm not sure if that, maybe if that's directed to me, maybe you could ask the question what profile or what link you're looking for. All right, so we see from Quellen, who asks, can I use some pictures to make a video file with Cubase? So Cubase can import a video file, and you could do some rudimentary editing. So if you needed to cut or remove a section, or, it will, allow you to export the file, but it's not going to actually generate the video file itself. So you'd probably want to use a video file, a video program to generate the video images, and Cubase could, is really designed to, aid in doing audio, like post-production for video or scoring to video, but not necessarily doing the video. Probably like most video programs don't have sequencers and are not really set for composition for audio and music. So. Okay, so you see the earlier questions for Jazz Dude. All right, so you see, hey Greg, go back to the dual agents problem, see if you get that to work. All right, so since we have I think we're at the end of the questions, we'll take a look at that. See, I may have to just do some reading up on it, but we'll see. All right, so let me just pick a different kit for this. All right, so we had two different kits. All right, so when we come over to our patterns, all right, so say, all right, so now we come here. All right, so say if I come here now, just slow tempo down a little bit so we can. So I think what we could do is just come over here, and if we wanted to switch the kit order, so if I wanted different kits, and now when I go to, and then you could turn off different kits. I thought that there was like one. This is what I was thinking of, global pattern pads. So let's say if I'm here, I could have this pattern playing. And now if I wanted to play this pattern, so now I could select but now that this is turned on, when I select, it's going to select them all together. And with this turned off, then I could select different kits from different players. So that's the little one tick that I was looking for. And Nick says just click the arrow and then you could load different patterns as well. So, but this way it's not all linked together once you deactivate that. All right, we'll see if there's any more questions that come in. My son is threatening to turn my mixer off. All right, so just another reminder, so it'll be Thursday for the next Club Cubase live stream, so 2 days from now, and then we'll be back on our normal Tuesday, Friday. I just didn't want to necessarily not have 2 live streams this week, so we're going to squeeze them in just a little closer than normal. All right, so we see a question from Sable Winters. Using add MIDI controller surface, must I have a script? Can it auto-populate, or must I manually do this? Okay, so let's say if I wanted to go to a MIDI remote and I wanted to add a particular device. So I'm going to just come over and I'm going to click on the plus sign here. And I'm going to just come over here and I'm going to make my own device. There's a number of devices that are available. So I'm going to say, let's add a device. Call it a Troy. And I'll call it a 120, even though it's 100. All right, so once we're creating our devices, so we'll say you're going to open up a window kind of like this. We could choose what type of knob, and the goal, like in this box, has like 8 sliders. So what I want to do is to just come over and I'm going to say I want a slider, and we can make this smaller and say, okay, instead of a knob, I wanted to have a slider. So now I'm going to move a slider and it automatically will just populate as I move the 8 faders on my control surface. And if we wanted to make these taller, you know, we could come over and adjust the size. So now once we have this, we could go to our mapping setup and we could say, okay, you know, these objects, like I wanted this to do quick control. So we could go to the mapping assistant, open that up and say, when I move this object, it's doing focus quick controls, and now I could assign it. So you don't have to have a script. you know, but you can come over here, oh, I have a button, I have a kind of a, you know, a knob that turns in circles. I could do lots of different functions. I want an XY pad. So basically you could create what your actual device looks like, your controller, and then map it for various functions so that you don't have to worry about a company coming up with that. You could just make your own in just a matter of minutes. Okay. So you see Mars Needs Max says I need to create integration maps to Groove Agent with my machine. I haven't taken the time to do that. So a lot of times with Groove Agent, it's really, you know, pretty easy to do that. One of the things that you can do with Groove Agent, once you have it set up, is just to come over here, and if you don't have, if you find that the pads aren't lining up, most of this is pretty standard. What you could do is just click on the actual use hardware mapping, then right click, and then you could just say edit learn trigger notes, and then just hit the pad, and that will assign that MIDI note for this particular pad. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's, you know, most kind of MPC style instruments will immediately just kind of align and work as expected. All right, let's see if there's any more questions. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. Again, if you want to email questions, you can send them to clubcubase@steinberg.de. And you know, we look forward to seeing everyone on Thursday. Appreciate everyone's understanding. We just want to make sure that we had 2 live streams in this week. Wonderful to see Capital Razor on. And we want everyone to stay safe and healthy, and I appreciate everyone spending part of their afternoon with me, and hope that it's been helpful, and, you know, let other people know that if, you know, that you've learned stuff on the live streams, and tell your friends. And also, you know, make sure that you take advantage. There's currently the 40% off promotion on WaveLab. So you could, if you thought of jumping into WaveLab, it's a great opportunity to do so. Let's see if there's any more questions. It's great to see so many new faces, and we hope to see a lot of people coming back. And we'll see if there's any other quick questions, and if not, we'll wrap up. I know there's usually about 20 to 30 seconds from when I talk to when it goes out to you guys and you guys hear it. Okay, so with that, I guess we have no more questions. Thanks again, and we will see everyone on Thursday. So look forward to it. Stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you Thursday. Goodbye.